Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and welcome back to Elite Dangerous. Today I've got a new target in mind. I'm heading to that nebula right there, Barnard's Loop. Looks a little bit different from this angle because I'm around about 8,000 light years to the galactic north of it. Now there's a specific reason I want to head out that way. Early on in the year, the whole region more or less became permit locked. Before that it was free to roam and players could go and have a look at the entire area around Barnard's Loop. But that is no longer the case. In fact, when the change came, many players actually found themselves locked out there. They were in systems that they were unable to leave and they had to contact Frontier support in order to be moved. Now Frontier have never talked about why the entire area became permit locked, but it would seem that they certainly have some big plans for the region. Now for those of you that haven't been there before, Barnard's Loop and the surrounding nebula is probably one of the most beautiful areas in the entire game. Now most nebula within the game are procedurally generated and they all tend to look very similar to each other, but Barnard's Loop is a different story. Much of it is handcrafted. You only need to take a quick look at Barnard's Loop on the galactic map in order to see just how much effort has actually got into it. And there behind my ship, just coming into view now, we can see Barnard's Loop yet again, and then momentarily that's the direction I'm going to be heading in. But before we go there, one more passing look at my current system, HIP 38064, a location that I highly recommend visiting. So, since the introduction of the permit locks around Barnard's Loop, it's actually become quite a difficult area to get into. Here you can see that I eventually did make it there, right near the Horsehead Nebula, a really beautiful nebula. Let's take a very quick look then at just how much of this region is actually locked down. You can see as I hover over some of the systems here that it says unknown permit required. So that means you can't plot a route there. There's absolutely no way of entering these systems. Fortunately, within the nebula itself, only some of the systems are actually permit locked, and many of them are still available to actually travel inside of. And this is a good thing because it is a stunning area and something well worth visiting. And as I pull out here a little bit on the galactic map, you can see the familiar nebula as we see it from inhabited space. So essentially all the systems that start with Cold 70 are now completely locked out. And most of these more or less surround Barnard's Loop. They're to the right of it there, above it, in front of it, to the left and over behind it as well. This makes the region quite difficult to get into because you need to find a system that is accessible. When you do eventually find one of those, you can try and plot a course to it. But unfortunately, the route planning does go very, very slow because it's got to try and navigate around all the permit locks. Occasionally you will find a system that you can successfully navigate to, but on other occasions it will simply say plotting failed. Fortunately though, the nebula is still accessible and there's a very specific way of getting in there. Now some of the areas right in the centre of it you do need a very high jump range ship to get to, but if you approach the nebula from a certain angle, then I believe you should be able to get there with a ship of reasonable jump range. And there, once again, we can see the Horsehead Nebula. Now, previously you used to be able to get right inside that, but now this is more or less the closest you can get. So there's obviously something probably quite interesting going on within there. If you're inside of inhabited space then, and you want to get out to Barnard's Loop, the way to do it is head to Orion here. And once there, you can plot a course to Orion. The approach to Barnard's Loop is always spectacular. Here you can see a number of nebula. Right at the front centre is the blue Running Man Nebula. Behind that you can just about make out the detailed cloud of the Orion Nebula, and beyond that is the large nebula of Barnard's Loop. Now once I had arrived at Rigel, the next destination I plotted course to was right here. This is Easy Orionis, one of the largest stars within the game. But of course, by no means the absolute largest. Nevertheless, do look at this. The entry point to this system is nearly 1,000 light seconds away from the main star. And here we are, approaching 1,500 light seconds away from the star. That is nearly 3 times the distance of Earth from our own sun. So that gives us an indication of just how large that star actually is. A few jumps in, we find ourselves right in the centre of the Orion Nebula. Now stars here are very densely packed. In some cases they're closer than 1 light second. Now this region is basically a stellar nursery. It's where new stars are born. I didn't take the time to go down to the surface of this world, but passing close by, we get to appreciate the sheer strength of the colours out here. And this is all down to the luminosity of the surrounding nebula, making it a very bright area of space. This moon did have active volcanism. In fact, it had water geysers here, so I will be returning to it a bit later on to go down there to see if I can find some of them. If you want to get over to the Horsehead Nebula, you're going to have to do a little bit of scouting around on the galactic map. As I mentioned earlier, many of these are permit locked, but a few are not. And it's these accessible systems which will be key in allowing you to get up close and personal with the Horsehead Nebula. So the big question then, why has this entire region of space more or less become a permit locked? What is going on inside of those systems that we can no longer access? There are a number of theories, but perhaps the leading one is that it's an area that will be home to a new alien race, pretty much right on the borders of humanity. If that does eventually turn out to be the case, what sort of life will we find here? And will it be advanced enough to have its own stations, its own ships, and its own planetary bases? The possibilities are intriguing to say the least. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.